Okay, so let's answer some of these questions here. All right, so let's talk about this. Standard sequence of actions with clients. It generally starts off with getting a communication channel set up in Slack. Like, first and foremost, we operate very quickly, so we don't rely on email and we don't rely on phone calls or meetings to get things going. We rely on Slack. And so I would say within a day of the contract being signed, we're going to have a Slack channel up. And then within the first week, we will have built out at least the base organization of a client in terms of like folders in Google Drive. So if they're a new client who've never done PR and we're starting from scratch, we'll at least put the folders in place. We'll get an agenda set up. If we have any sort of like urgent thing like a media list that we need to create, we'll create the necessary assets. If we are inheriting a program from another agency, which is often the case, we'll try to comb through it, find anything that looks good, and start to organize here. So, yeah, this is all client facing. So they'll have, within that first week, they'll have, Slack channel set up. We'll have our first weekly call. We'll have all the Google Docs organized. And I would say other things that generally can happen in the first month are, sometimes we'll take a look at what are competitors doing. We'll do reports and deep dives, because if we need to establish, who may be doing, better than us, or are there any ideas we can take, we'll try to take a look at that. Other things that'll probably, be happening behind the scenes that are not necessarily important for the client, but just for you to understand like what the process is like. So we'll have project management software set up where we'll kind of have our different client action items, assigned by person on the team. You know, Additionally, if we need to set anything up or do a presentation, probably do it through a series of looms. Like, for example, one of the things that we did for one of our clients, probably within the first month of, kind of getting set up, was we did this competitor deep dive where we wanted to take a look at, what were they doing, and, I don't know that it's this thing here. Probably not. Um, but it was basically, a good 30-minute presentation that kind of went through everything that was what they were doing, what we can do, and kind of recorded that on a loom and sent that over to them. So, I'd say in the first week, a lot of it's just like organization. It also depends on the client. So sometimes clients are coming in and they are racing towards like a product launch, some sort of like big announcement. They have some fundraising they need to announce, or, whatever. There's always something, right? So like usually that's like 2 or 3 weeks out. If we're lucky, we have enough time to prepare for it and really like plan for it. Oftentimes clients will hire us at the last minute. And so we're just kind of like off to the races. So while this organization and stuff will get created, the actual like work towards the announcement is kind of like straight into it. And so I'll just kind of go through the assets that generally get created first so you understand We always have media lists for all of our clients, which is like who are going to be our targets for different kinds of stories based on the topics that we're kind of looking at. If anyone has any previous relationships or previous coverage, we're going to go ahead and note that there. That is sort of a staple of things. We'll also get a like kind of a PR tracker going for like in general, across the board. We'll have the different categories of things we're working on for them, like announcements, speaking awards, podcasts, opinion pieces, any sort of fast commentary, and discretionary spend that we have for that particular client. Additionally, we will also probably end up creating like an agenda document in Google Docs, which is where we'll run all of our meetings. So we'll have all of this historical data that we can kind of go back and look at. And I want to say those are like kind of like the initial kickoff things that we'll be doing. Additionally, okay, one last thing I remembered. We also like to have these Slack channels where if we come across opportunities that are happening that are kind of like, you know, pretty time sensitive, a reporter is looking to connect with a source on a story, we'll source it, we'll flag it, we'll put it into a Google Doc for our client and we'll tag them. And this is like separate and away from our normal sort of like normal Slack channel. Yeah, and additionally, I think that probably pretty much sums everything up in terms of like how we would kind of get started. And then all each of these different categories, awards, op-eds, podcasts, announcements, thought leadership, speaking, all that kind of stuff will get built out in the weeks and the months that follow. But like in terms of your question here around what is sort of the sequence of events, there there really is. It's unlike a website where you have like the same sort of steps for each client that you go through. This is different for each client always. But in general, the things I've described are kind of from a logistics standpoint, what sort of ends up being created first and always gets done for every client, regardless of who they are. So, yeah, hopefully that's helpful.